Okay, so this weekend we had UFC Fight Night, Uriah Hall versus Anderson Silva in the main event. Coming into this fight, by the way, your boy picked I almost picked it to a T. I said that Uriah Hall would win this fight by KO or TKO in late round 3. He almost did in late round 3, and then he finished it in round 4. I also picked the co-main event correctly as well. Your boy's on a hot streak. What do you want me to say? I'm on a hot streak. But this fight had a lot of significance coming in. We here at the channel have seen Uriah Hall as one of the better 185ers here for a long time if he can just put it together. And obviously the significance of Anderson Silva, possibly it being his last fight ever. Definitely his last fight in the UFC. I have a feeling, and we'll talk about it in a second, I think I know what he's going to do next. But yeah, this fight was interesting, man. It was more of the same that we thought it would be. So we talked about, last week, Uriah Hall coming into this fight being very tentative as usual. We thought, okay, if Uriah Hall's going to win this fight, he needs to put Anderson on the back foot. Anderson being 45 now, the reflexes just aren't going to be there as quickly as they may have been in his prime when he was prime Spider. To put him on the back foot is kind of the way to beat him. Michael Bisping did that, even though Michael Bisping got knocked dead in that fight and somehow rose back to life. Izzy made him kind of wary about coming forward on Izzy. And Jared Cannonier obviously was just very powerful, and the leg kicks took down Anderson Silva. We saw Anderson fight in a different way, like a different way than we had in a long time. Very aggressive forward. A lot of combinations, especially later in the rounds. But this fight started off very slow, very almost snail's pace slow. I mean, obviously, when you're a guy like Uriah Hall, we talked about this. When you're fighting your idol, when your idols become your rivals, it's surreal, I'm sure, being in there with a guy that you've looked up to forever. And we saw how much he really did look up to him, how much of a hero Anderson Silva was to him and really to the MMA community, but personified through Uriah Hall at the end of the fight when he's, weeping because he just beat his idol. And he's like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I had to get this win. So it's I'm sure even harder just to stand in front of him. The aura, the idolization of the guy across from you. Now you got to go beat him. So it was a very slow opening. Both guys very tentative. Uriah even more so, though. Anderson Silva was doing a good job landing leg kicks. But again, one thing that we saw from Uriah is how quick he is, man. That jab is so nice at 85 for Uriah. He just snaps that thing out there, and he was catching Silva with it a couple of times early. But again, not a lot doing. I gave Silva the first round because Uriah basically didn't do it. There was not a lot of output. And in the second round, more of the same, very tentative. And then in Anderson's favor, he was doing a good job again, landing the leg kicks, pressuring forward, which we haven't seen him do in a long time. Really, it wasn't pressure just for pressure's sake. He was pressuring Uriah Hall, making Uriah fight backward, putting him on the back foot, and landing some shots off of it. It wasn't anything that was hurting Uriah, but he was landing shots. And it was a close second round. You could have given that to Silva. You could have given that to Hall. It just depends on where you wanted to go with that. I think I ended up giving that one to Hall. And then in the third round, both guys come out, and Silva's winning the third round. I thought he's winning the third round for the majority of the round, and then the kind of aggressive forward push toward the end of the round, maybe to really put an exclamation point, which fighters tend to do, especially in those last 10 seconds. If it's a close round, you always want to leave the judges with a lasting impression. You want to be like, that guy, he was the one that wanted it more at the end of the round. That's why you see guys shoot takedowns, sometimes throw wild techniques at the end of the round because you want to leave that impression on the judges if this thing goes to a scorecard. And Silva comes forward, and Uriah clips him with an overhand right in the exchange. He kind of taps him with the left hook, and the overhand comes across, and it wasn't a deadly overhand. It just caught Anderson right in the back, right where, he caught him right behind the ear. And you've seen that shot behind the ear throw off guys' equilibrium. You saw Conor hit Dustin Poirier with that shot, and it kind of just buckled him. And Uriah just touched him with it, and Anderson fell to the ground. And that's when I realized, I was like, Uriah hadn't landed anything substantive the whole time. I mean, he'd landed some body shots and some leg kicks, and the jab was really sticking out there. But that was the first shot of significance that either guy had really landed. That was a damaging shot. And Anderson crumbled to the floor, and I was like, oh, no. This is the first point in the fight where I was like, okay, we have a different Anderson Silva here. This is not the guy that was in wars with Chael Sonnen that was outclassing the entire division. His chin has deteriorated, and it should be. For 45 years of age, his chin's not going to be the greatest. But again, that shot behind the ear would probably do a lot of guys in, but it just showed you where Anderson was at that time. It was like he got touched behind the ear and immediately crumbles to the ground. Uriah jumps on top. He's trying to finish the fight there, and the horn sounds. We go to round 4, and this is where Uriah ended up finishing the fight. MMA has a way of returning full cycle, if you will. It has a way of completing that life cycle. I don't know if you call it the MMA gods. I don't know if you call it fate. It's just you come into this game, and no matter how long you're dominant in this game, no matter how many times you win, at some point, someone is going to return the favor that you gave to however many people throughout your career. It's just the way the game goes. You deteriorate, you get older, the newer guys come in, and they take over the game, and at some point, their time comes. But for Anderson Silva, it was almost poetic. It was almost like a storybook ending. Like in wrestling, in professional wrestling, I'm a big professional wrestling fan. Obviously, it's scripted, right? But the guys that are in pro wrestling for a long, long time, when they decide to retire, they don't retire on top. And it's because they want to do the job. They want to give the next guy all the fans that they had because he beats them, right? And it kind of felt like that. It felt like that full coming of circle for Anderson Silva in the 4th round, because he comes out again in the 4th round and very aggressive once again, blitzing toward, doing all the hand motions, the classic distraction hand motions that Anderson Silva used to do. And he rushes in on Uriah Hall, and Uriah just kind of slides back and drops the right hand on him and crumbles him to the ground and finishes the fight there. And it was so eerily reminiscent to a young Anderson Silva that was taken over the UFC by storm, fighting Forrest Griffin. Forrest comes forward, lunges out with the big left jab. Anderson steps back and throws the right paw on him and drops him. And it didn't look exactly the same, but it looked eerily similar. The way it happened, the ability of Uriah to fight going backward. It was almost the passing of a torch without, actually trying to pass the torch. It was just one of those things. The MMA guys looked down and said, this is how it has to end, at least in the UFC. And we have some thoughts about that. But it was a beautiful shot from Uriah Hall. He wins the fight. Like I said, at the end of it, Uriah comes down and he's just crying unconsolably. He's like, I'm sorry. I love you. I appreciate everything you've done for me. He was genuinely upset that he had to fight this guy, a guy he looked up to, and beat him the way he did. But again, this fight was a story being told through years and years of dominance of Anderson Silva. All respect to Anderson Silva. He's changed the game. Guys like Uriah Hall wouldn't be here. Guys like Israel Adesanya wouldn't be here. Conor McGregor, to some extent, wouldn't be here without the expertise and the confidence that Anderson Silva gave guys to come into this sport. He made some guys that were kickboxers, that were Taekwondo experts, come into this sport, Muay Thai experts. They wanted to come into this sport because they saw how dominant this guy was and how he was changing the game. So all respect to Anderson. A good fight for Uriah Hall. And unfortunately for Anderson, it looks like that time. It does. He's 45 years old. It looks like father time. The MMA gods are coming up with that hand on the shoulder and saying, hey, we had a good run. You're one of the best to ever do it. You're a GOAT. But it's time to head on home. I don't know if that's something he's going to do, because even in his post-fight, when he's talking to Michael Bisping, and Bisping's trying to give him a reason to say, yes, this is it. He's like, is this truly it? You've said sometimes that you're going to retire, and now we don't know. Is this truly it? And Anderson still would not say. He said, I think this is my last UFC fight, which leaves the door open for Bellator. And we've seen some guys that stay past their prime in the UFC, go to Bellator and have some sort of success. Chael, Rampage, King Mo. A lot of these guys, I don't know. What if it is the very last dance of the spider and he's spun his last web? It has been truly an honor. Thank you so much, Anderson Silva. Congratulations to Uriah Hall. I see him doing big things at 85. This confidence boost that you give to a guy like Uriah Hall with the skills that he has, it's all up here with this guy. It is. It's his ability to let it go and flow freely. He picks his shots. He aims and fires, to quote Israel Adesanya. Another sniper in there. And at 85, that might just be what it takes to beat a guy like Israel Adesanya. But that is your result from the main event. Uriah Hall by TKO in the 4th round. Thank you, Anderson Silva. And may the Spiders legend live on.